Tonight's story isn't about ghosts, it's about a street that stares back. I'm a box truck driver, and this is what happened on 79th Street on Chicago's South Side. Dim bulbs, cracked sidewalks, and to cars that kept circling like they already knew my route. I'm going to tell it like it happened, breath for breath. So if you've ever run a late drop in a neighborhood that hums after midnight, you're going to feel this one. Before we roll, if you live for realistic trucking story suspense, city danger, and the grind we face behind the wheel, hit subscribe to mile marker 31. Turn on the bell and drop a comment with the city that made your nerves ring. Your support keeps these engines running. Buckle in. Chapter 1 starts now.
Chapter 1. The Drop on 79th. I rolled off the Dan Ryan and onto 79th with the kind of focus you only get when the city feels like it is looking back at you. The GPS glared blue on the dash, an electronic map of nerves. My box truck hummed like a refrigerator that never sleeps, the floor vibrating under my boots. The air was thick with diesel and the ghost of fried grease drifting from somewhere upwind. Dim streetlights threw cones of jaundiced light over cracked sidewalks. Tags in a dozen hands ran like vines across brick. Every second storefront was a shutter or a gate. The curb glittered with busted glass, like a spill of cheap stars. Dispatch had me routed to a late-night delivery on 79th, west of Halsted. 1 pallet, 17 boxes. A small convenience supplier that swore they stayed open late for the morning rush. I was the 14th hour favor nobody wanted. That is box truck work. You are the patch on somebody else's plan. I eased up to the curb outside a narrow storefront with a roll-down gate and a paper sign that said receiving in fading marker. My hazards clicked. Tick, tick. The hum of a CTA bus drifted by like a whale in shallow water. Brakes sighing, door hissing. On the corner, a currency exchange flickered. Across the street, a fried chicken joint bled neon red onto the sidewalk. The street had holes that could swallow a rim. A stray shopping cart rattled in the wind like bones. I called the receiving number. It rang to voicemail. I texted the contact. No read. I set the parking brake, kept the engine running, and cracked the window to let the night in at arm's length. The smart move in places like this is to do the dance as fast as you can, but never look like you are in a hurry. I pulled on my reflective vest like a paper-thin shield and checked the mirrors for the 100th time. The city stared back, and I stared right with my hands at 10 and 2, like a man waiting on an answer that might not come. Chapter 2. The circle begins. The first car slid past slow, a dark sedan with a lazy idle and windows tinted to midnight. It rolled by like it was listening to the street breathe. The second passed the opposite way a few minutes later, silver with peeling bumper stickers and a license plate that looked hung by thread. Maybe they were just neighbors. Maybe they were the neighborhood. I kept my eyes on the load bar behind me, like it was the only line I needed to hold. The phone lit up with a text from dispatch asking for an ETA proof. I snapped a photo of the storefront with the gate down and the timestamp stamped. My e-log clock ticked in my periphery. I told myself I would give it 10 more and then reschedule. The thought felt like an argument I had already lost. The dark sedan returned from the far end of the block, slower this time. The streetlight above my right mirror buzzed and then went quiet, dying into a cone of darker dark. The silver car reappeared behind me, brake lights pulsing. I cut the dome light so I could see out better. I was just a face in a shadow behind glass, a reflection in my own mirror. The city raised its volume by a notch. A couple argued 3 doors down. Somewhere a bottle popped. A siren wailed from far off, the sound bouncing between buildings like it was trapped in a jar. I put my hand on the window controls and found myself counting the breaths between each pass. You do not count because you want to. You count because your heartbeat needs somewhere to put its rhythm. Chapter 3. Lock and load in. I climbed out with my clipboard and the ball, keeping my back to the truck like a man not trying to tempt the night. The pavement tilted toward the gutter, fractured into islands. I knocked on the gate. No answer. I could feel eyes. Maybe that was just what the dark does when it decides to say your name. From the curb, I could see deep into the street. A corner store threw light across the road. Nobody inside was looking at me. That should have helped. It did not. The dark sedan eased to the stop sign, lingered, and then drifted on. The silver car's engine shattered somewhere out of sight. Back at the liftgate, I thumbed the switch and let the platform wind down just enough that the sound would carry. It was theater. It told whoever was listening that I was here to work, not here to play. I slid the pallet jack to the door, bracing the handle against the threshold. I kept my phone on record in my vest pocket. The little red dot in the corner felt like a lifeline. A moving shadow cut across the far wall of the truck box, then vanished. It had been my imagination. It had been a person. Those answers sat side by side in my head, staring at me like family. I locked the cab doors again, a click in my bones. I checked the mirrors, saw a figure on the opposite sidewalk wearing a hoodie and carrying a plastic bag that might have been anything. He kept walking. He did not look at me. That should have helped. It did not. Chapter 4. The Approach. The silver car rolled up behind me tight as a cough, idling with the nose pointed at my bumper. The dark sedan slid into place across the street. If they were neighbors, they had chosen nice symmetrical parking. I watched the mirror and saw two shapes in the silver car, heads low. The passenger looked down at a phone. The driver stared at my taillights like fortune-telling. I called the receiving number again. This time, it rang once and went dead. I tried the main line printed on the window in crooked vinyl. A machine told me the hours. It told me I was outside them. I knew that already. I told dispatch I was boarding in 5 if the receiver did not show. Dispatch typed back a thumbs up like they were in the room with me. I put my seat all the way up. I wanted the wheel close, my shoulders square. I took the key off the clip and held it loose in my left hand. The passenger door on the silver car opened an inch and then shut again. The sedan across the street flashed tiny white reverse lights and then settled. I could hear a single laugh from somewhere, soft and short and without humor. The air smelled like old oil and wet cardboard. I adjusted the mirror and caught my own eyes looking older than the last route. It is strange when the truck cab feels like the only honest room left. 2 men crossed the street in a slant, not hurrying. One wore a jacket too heavy for the night. The other had a hat with a brim that hid his face. They looked anywhere but at me, which meant they were looking at me. They stopped at the storefront next to mine, pretended to read a menu in a window that had been closed all day. I could feel my pulse in my fingertips. I kept my hands visible on the wheel and lifted my chin like a man who might already be late for somewhere else. Chapter 5. Knock and Answer. It starts quiet. That is what nobody tells you. The night pulls in. The street narrows. The space inside the cab gets smaller, even though nothing moves. Then the knock. 3 soft taps on the passenger glass. Not a bang. Not a threat. A request. The kind you ignore at your own risk. I turned my head slow. A face hovered in the darkness outside the glass, eyes floating, mouth a thin line. He made the universal sign for roll it down. I shook my head once and put my palm up in a stop. He leaned in where the tint made me a shadow. He said something I could not hear. The guy in the heavy jacket stood back by the hood of the silver car, one hand in a pocket, watching the street and me with the same look. Off my right, the sedan across the way was a black hole with potential. I tapped the horn with my palm. Not a blast, a warning. The sound hopped the block, bounced, came back to sit beside us. The man at the window flinched a notch. He lifted his phone, the screen ghosting his face, and held it so the camera looked at my cab. He wanted me to see the lens. I stared at the road straight ahead like I was considering Sunday plans. I reached left and thumbed the door lock just to hear it click and remind myself I had a boundary. He knocked again, harder, the kind of knock that had a story behind it. I showed him my palm again. He shook his head. The hand in the jacket pocket shifted. A bus roared by with a wash of light that made us all reel for a second. When it passed, we were shadows again. I heard a voice behind me from the sidewalk. Another shape had joined. The space around the truck was an equation. I did not like the math on. Chapter 6. The alley play. There was a narrow service alley 9 feet wide, 2 doors up. I had clocked it when I pulled in. Most alleys in cities like this are promises and threats at once. They can save you or pin you. From my angle, I could thread the truck through if the gods of mirrors were generous. The problem was the silver car behind me and the black sedan angled across the street, like a chess piece guarding the lane. The man at my window shifted his weight, the brim of his hat cutting a crescent from the night. He tapped the glass with his knuckle one more time, and then lifted his hand, 2 fingers flicking in a small gesture that read like the start of a sentence. The jacket man looked toward the alley, and then back at me. They did not have to say it. The alley was part of the plan, either theirs or mine. I breathed in and felt the wheel under my palms like a live thing. I cracked the window the width of 2 fingers and spoke with my voice steady. I told the man I was leaving and they should step back. He smiled without joy and said I should relax. I said I was as relaxed as I get. His eyes cooled. The jacket hand moved a fraction. The part of my mind that always knows where the gear lever is took over. Reverse, brake, horn. I snapped the wheel, laid on the horn long and ugly, and let the truck jump backward 1 foot like a dog testing a chain. The silver car jerked. The driver threw it in reverse instinctively and rolled back 2 yards, bumper dipping. I rode that breath. From the corner of my eye, I saw the sedan's door crack open. I dropped the truck into drive. The liftgate still hung at mid-height, like a metal tongue. I toggled it up with my left thumb while my right fed power. The platform rose fast enough to scrape sparks as it shut and locked. I felt the thud and used it like a starter pistol. I cranked hard left, nose arcing, horn still shouting the block awake. The man at the window jumped back, palm out. The box scraped the curb, the rear roll-up shuddering. I threaded the nose toward the alley mouth. It looked like a keyhole that had shrunk since I last checked. The sedan's passenger door opened all the way now. A voice yelled something sharp. A bottle shattered somewhere behind the truck. I committed. The mirrors kissed the alley walls with a grind that sent a vibration down the rails. Dry brick dust sifted like rust-colored confetti. The alley stank of wet bread and old paint. I could hear feet on concrete behind me, the slap-slap of urgency. I fed throttle in a thin stream. The truck swam forward on the tightest margin I have ever driven, the box whispering shaved paint into the night. Halfway down a dumpster, angled out from its slot like a shoulder. I did the math in a breath and pulled the wheel right then left, nudging the bumper past with an inch to spare. Something clanged under the truck and the cab shuddered. A cat shot out like a fired thought. At the far end, the alley opened onto a side street that sloped toward Halsted. I did not look back. The mirror on the passenger side hung like a broken arm, swinging useless. The city in front of me was suddenly a grid again, and I was back in a classroom I understood. Chapter 7. The long exile Halsted's lights looked like a runway. I turned right and went 3 blocks without breathing. A patrol car rolled past the opposite way, blue lights dark but presence obvious. I caught a green and took it like a blessing. My hands were still tight on the wheel, knuckles white like chalk. I headed north, every block a small prayer, until the weight in my chest agreed to share space with air again. I pulled into a gas station lot that sat under a white flood of light, cameras staring like eyes that never blink. The clerk inside watched me from behind bulletproof glass and did not look away. I parked under the brightest bulb and cut the engine. The sudden quiet inside the cab made my own breath sound loud. I watched the street through the windshield, and the street watched back. No silver car, no dark sedan, just the late shift marching on. The receiving number buzzed in at last with a voicemail that sounded like an apology mailed from far away. They were sorry. They had left early. Could I come back at 6? I deleted it. I sent dispatch a summary through the app with the kind of language that would make insurance happy and nobody else. I could still taste the alley grit at the back of my throat. My vest felt like a joke now that the punchline had been told. I thought about how the city in the daytime wears the same face but speaks a different language. How 79th looks like work and errands and kids with backpacks when the sun is up. How the stories all share the same blocks but not the same chapters. I thought about why I still do this. The truth is, I do not have a clean answer. Part of it is simple. Work is work. Part of it is stubborn. The road is a confession booth that does not judge. Part of it is that I know how to get from one corner to the next, and some nights that is a skill worth something. I started the truck again and let the engine settle. The mirror swung and knocked the door with a soft thud, as if reminding me not to get too proud. I pointed the nose toward the yard, away from 79th, away from the narrow alley that had opened its mouth and let me pass. I kept one eye on the road and the other on the edges of the map. I told the story to the windshield first, then to the glow of the dashboard, and now to you. Not because I want to scare you, because it is true. Some places ask you a question when you arrive. Who are you? Why are you here? What do you think you know? Tonight 79th asked all three and more. I answered the only way I could, with my hands on the wheel, with the truck moving forward, with the city in my mirrors, still there, still watching, as the night pulled in behind me and the road unwound ahead.
That was my night on 79th, no heroics. Just hands on the wheel, mirrors shaking, and a narrow alley that chose to let me pass. If you've ever stared through glass and felt a block staring back, you know the feeling in my chest right now. Tell me in the comments, would you have cracked the window or pulled the horn? What's your rule after midnight deliveries? If this story hit home, please like the video, subscribe to Mile Marker 31, and share it with a driver who runs nights. New confessional runs drop every week. Real highways, real fear, real decisions. I'll see you at the next mile marker.